Aguado in the background has never been happier. It's time to talk about the greatest Argentine rugby players of all time.
Or rugby personalities of all time. Aguado is in the running, by the way.
That's a very good point.
He's a part of this.
Yeah, he's maybe the greatest national mascot a team's ever had. He's certainly up there.
Good choice of words. So Sinbad doesn't get offended.
Yeah, and did an excellent job with his club, obviously, with Jaguares.
Yes, of course.
So, it is time. They have asked us. They are somewhere in La Plata building a shrine to Argentine rugby. And they want us to pull out 4 Argentine legends to go on a kind of Pumas Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
Okay. So this is greatest contribution to the Argentine national men's rugby team.
Yeah.
We're looking at the 15s. We're not counting the 7s in here as well.
Yeah.
Worth noting. Obviously, they've got a great history in 7s for the last few years. We are going to go deep into who might be contenders of this. I want to throw one rogue name out.
Okay.
Right? Which is the South African journalist who coined the term Pumas.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously, the elephant in the room, or the puma in the room, is the animal on the badge. For a long time, it was a jaguar.
A jaguar, yeah.
It's only in the last 3 or 4 years they've changed it to a puma finally.
So funny that, isn't it? How on earth did someone cock that up?
Yeah,
so
well,
badly?
it was a South African journalist who just got the term wrong, right? He got it wrong, and it just stuck. And it stuck for decades.
That's
it stuck
real
until now
funny.
when they finally changed it about 3 or 4 years ago.
I love how
COVID.
long it took someone to notice that, hang on, it's not in a puma.
So I think that's a contender. That's a rogue shout for that anonymous journalist.
Yeah.
We'll sell copies of his article in the gift shop, I think.
Sure.
However, who would be your first shout for an Argentine all-time, the 4 big names who deserve to be there?
Okay, yeah. Again, a big part of this, as we discussed on the Australian one we did before, this being the Squidge Rugby, Mount Rushmore, my first pick, I went towards who do I think of when I think about Argentine rugby?
Sure.
Who is the first name, the person who, particularly when I first got into rugby, who summarised Argentine rugby for me, who, made it special for me. And that has to be Felipe Contepomi.
Yeah.
The bald eagle himself, an incredible player and captain for them. He was the captain when we first started watching and the real leader, the centrepiece of their team. Was brilliant with Leinster, with Stade Francais throughout his career. With Bristol, yeah. And was truly iconic on the pitch. Yeah. Played with the heart of a lion, had a real, or heart of a puma or jaguar, if you want. Had a real shithouse nature to him as well. Loved ruffling feathers when he was on the pitch, but had a brilliant skill set. Played as either a fly half or a centre. Was equally good in both positions because he loved running into people, so that made him a good centre. Famously in the 2011 World Cup, rushed up from an incredibly offside position to charge Dan Parks onto his wrong foot for him to miss the winning drop goal in the Scotland-Argentina game. Yeah. Got Argentina out the group, and he got away with it, which makes it brilliant because he clearly, he knew that the referee had it back to him, and for some reason the touch judges weren't looking at him, and he got away with it, which is brilliant, and got him out the pool alongside a great moment from somebody who may or may not come up later, but Lucas Gonzalez Amorosino, one of the great, most entertaining Argentine rugby players of all time. But yeah, Contepomi has since gone on to coach them. Has done a brilliant job as a coach. I think that's kind of cemented him as the Argentine rugby personality.
This is the element for me, is his coaching. So you look at Contepomi the player, and what a brilliant player he was. There was always a little bit of one-man team Contepomi.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He was obviously the fly half, but he didn't distribute as much as you'd like him to sometimes. And sometimes it was he'd go for chips over the top, or he'd try and dummy and go himself, and a little bit of that. And that was always in his game, right? And so he's got a brilliant highlights reel, but sometimes what you miss is, a moment earlier, he threw a dummy and ran up a blind alley into a prop.
Yeah.
That did happen. That wasn't his game. He was sometimes quite frustrating to watch, and yet whenever it came off, he was so brilliant and so effortless. But the thing that's happened since he retired is he has gone on to become first a brilliant attack coach, working with the Pumas, obviously under Michael Check at the end of that reign, as well as at Leinster, as well as work floating around for a long time in kind of French rugby. And then since then, he's taken over in the last 2 years as their head coach. Yeah. And he has done an undeniably brilliant job. They've beaten the British and Irish Lions for the first time ever. They've beaten the All Blacks for, the second and third time? The third time, ever under him. They had arguably their best rugby championship ever. The first time they went into the final day in the shout of winning it ever last year.
Beat the world champion Springboks within a year of them winning the World Cup.
And then you add in everything he did as the attack coach, the assistant coach in the World Cup, where they got to a semi-final again. and were very, very close to reaching third again, which is obviously the achievement he managed in his playing days in 2007. So I think that cements him in this place. I think he came in and he was a borderline figure of like, he's probably in there, but can we say for certain there's other players who can take his spot because they've got so many brilliant, particularly backs.
Yeah.
But I do think with the coaching element added in, you kind of can't deny it.
I just think he is Argentine rugby.
Yeah.
He is what I think of Argentine rugby as. He's one of those similar to, like we've talked about, like Johnny Sextons before, who've just refused not to play well.
Yeah.
And when he's had those moments where he's thrown dummies when he should have passed it or whatever, like he's still gotten over the gain line because he's so petty and like such an arsehole on the pitch, and I love him for it.
And obviously he was the guy who mentored Sexton as well.
Yeah.
Sexton was his understudy at Leinster.
Yeah.
And then he gets injured in the Heineken Cup semi-final. Sexton comes on, has the kind of game of his life up to that point, and births his career from there, goes on to win his first Ireland Cup later that year. But it was very much he was mentored by Contepomi. Yeah. And when you look back on who Sexton became, of a player powered purely by spite, kind of couldn't ask for a better mentor than Felipe Contepomi as well.
Hell yeah.
And you throw that in, like you could almost see his coaching credentials there during that kind of second half of his playing days.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. You say the guy that comes to mind when you think of Argentine rugby. Mm-hmm. I am going to throw out the guy who I think is that for an awful lot of people, particularly anyone older than us, even by just a couple of years, right? Which is Hugo Porta.
Yes.
The GOAT.
Yeah.
Almost undeniably the greatest Argentine player of all time. There's a couple more who we will bring up that I think are in contention there. But he was the guy who dragged Argentina kicking and screaming into the kind of tier 1 status. Obviously they didn't get promoted to the tier 1 kind of position until 2008 following the 2007 World Cup where Contepomi was playing. But you look at when Porta came into the team first in 1978, he changed them entirely. They went from a side who were pulling off the odd decent result to a team who were consistently, right? They beat Australia twice in pretty quick succession.
Yeah.
They drew with the All Blacks. They pulled off wins over Wales, over Scotland. They beat the junior Springboks. They had a huge number of really significant results. They went into the 87 World Cup and kind of underperformed. We still saw flashes of that. And then
but
Porta
they were a
himself
bit more
continued.
competitive with Porta coming out of retirement for that age 35 at this point as well.
Yeah.
In a, let's say, mixed Argentine backline.
Yes.
Could chuck the Lanza twins on Mount Rushmore.
We could.
But also that would defeat the objective and devalue it forevermore.
And also they have the same face because they're identical twins.
Yep. And they played rugby in the same way.
In exactly the same way.
Very
which
interesting
was
characters.
Basically
run backwards.
Run backwards, occasionally beat 6 defenders, but lose 5 metres.
Yeah. And
Great
occasionally
characters.
you beat a defender, but you run into touch in the process.
Yeah.
Bizarre characters. But point is, Hugo Porta was the glue of that team.
He was.
And he held the whole thing together. And they had a few very good players in the pack as well. Like Diego Cash, quick shout out to him. He was very, very good. But it was entirely Porta. The fact that he had his head screwed on, he was kicking them into the right places. And also, he had a really good running and defensive game as well. He was really, really solid for them.
Silver at fullback as well. He went on to play in a bunch of World Cups, played right through to, I think, 99. And was brilliant. Another, well-established player. I've got someone else on that team I do want to throw out in a minute, though.
Yeah.
But I think Hugo Porta is undeniable. Retired as their top point scorer, retired as the most famous player of all time, was the first Argentine inducted into the Hall of Fame, was one of, and this is a great kind of trivia thing, right? One of 3 players to win Argentina's equivalent of the Sports Personality of the Year. They're Sportsman of the Year, which is a huge award that's been going for over 100 years. Lionel Messi's won it about 68 times.
Yeah.
But
God, imagine being a sports person in Argentina right now whilst Messi's still playing.
But Porta's one of 3 rugby players to ever win it. The other 2, right? I'll give you 2 guesses who they might be.
So not Contepomi.
Not Contepomi.
Juan Hernandez.
No.
No. Juan Fernandez Lobbe.
No. Those are your 2 guesses. Gonzalo Quesada.
Okay.
Who was obviously top points scorer in 1999, which is the year he got it in that World Cup. A huge part of their upset against Ireland, and the quarter-final and so on, and having up to that point their best World Cup ever.
Yeah.
He was kind of the face of that, and
a very worthy mention for this.
Yeah.
I considered putting Quesada in.
He's worth a mention.
And again, is a great rugby brain as well, and has had a really good coaching career beyond that with Stade Francais again, and now Italy.
And another guy who I came across when researching this, and I think absolutely deserves mention, Bernardo Ateno.
Okay.
Who played for Argentina in the 60s. He was their captain in the 60s.
Right.
And prior to that point, Argentine rugby was sort of, I'm not going to say nothing, right? But they played the other South American teams and they beat them. But they didn't go on other tours, really. They occasionally welcomed other teams in. and broadly they lost them, right? And it was more like a money-spinning exercise of come and see New Zealand, come and see England, come and see Wales, whoever. Under his leadership, they beat Wales for the first time ever. It was officially a Wales A team, so it doesn't count as a test, but like Wales don't have pretty much a lot of their best players. So like Gerald Davis was playing, there's a bunch of those players, but like Gareth Edwards wasn't there, so it didn't count. And then they also beat South Africa A, the Junior Springboks, and he kind of saw them to that status, and he was kind of the figurehead, the captain,
Porter before
the inspirational
Porter.
figure. Yeah. Played in the forwards, Otono.
Yeah.
But yeah, was I think worth a mention as someone else who, was
Okay,
there.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, also before we move on much further, I have just mentioned 2 names there who I want us to talk about. I think Porter's pretty much locked in.
Yeah.
We'll put him up here on Mount Rushmore for the time being, I think. But I just mentioned Juan Martin Hernandez. El Majo, as they nicknamed him, the player of the tournament in the 2007 Rugby World Cup, where Argentina kind of out of nowhere got bronze and came up with that magical day 1 victory over France, which then everyone thought was a fluke, and then they went on and were brilliant and beat him again later in the tournament. And we watched that tournament back, and I think I was certainly a little bit reluctant to believe the hype too quickly on how good El Majo was in that tournament. And watching him, it was like, oh no, he's a level above the other fly halves that are playing here.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of competition. He was playing against some world-class players.
Yeah.
And he was incredible. His kicking in, the banana kick was kind of something he pioneered.
Yeah, his trademark, right?
Yeah.
There's not many players who've brought something into the game and it'll be forever kind of known as doing a Hernandez.
Yeah.
Is that banana kick, that kind of hitting the ball on the outside so it curves back around.
So it's like Sam Prendergast, very good these days. Finn Russell as well.
The other thing, he had 2 of those kicks that he pioneered, right? The other one being landing it deliberately just like an inch outside the 22.
Yes.
Which was kind of his tactic that he brought in, that he kind of pioneered himself, because he was a great thinker of the game, but had an incredible skill set to back it up. He was, obviously, as you say, known as El Majo, as the magician.
Loved an out-the-back pass.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But could do anything, was so flawless. Him and Dan Carter have a very unique thing, Gavin Henson as well. In terms of all the players I've ever watched, they may be the 3 that are the most difficult to read, who can just do anything from anywhere. Dupont as well is sort of in that.
Richie Mo'unga I'd put up there,
Mo'unga's, but like the way they glide over the ground, the way they don't seem to be moving that fast, the way you can see them thinking, but you can't tell what they're going to do at all. Just absolutely brilliant. One of the great players.
Hernandez as well played every position in the back line other than scrum half in his Argentine career, and that's pretty impressive. And to a good standard.
Yeah. Obviously a brilliant fullback. Was a superb tackler as well, which often gets left out because people talk about the skill set because you want to. You want to talk about his kicking game. You want to talk about his pass, which was unreal. Stephen Jones, not the fly half, obviously the most awarded and most beloved man in all of rugby, with all the correct opinions, said he might be the best rugby player he's ever seen. And he has seen at least 4 rugby players, and I think he might have actually just been the most recent rugby player he's seen. He was watching the golf. So I think Hernandez, I would have him on there, frankly.
You'd have him on there.
He was on mine, but I can see arguments
we
both
won't
ways.
etch him in just yet. We'll come back to Hernandez. However, as a sheer entertainer, he's up there.
In terms of how he makes me feel, in terms of how excited I get watching him, in terms of how much joy I've had watching him back and watching highlights.
Again, when you ask what is Argentine rugby?
Yeah, it's El Majo.
Is El Majo. Okay, we will put a pin on El Majo.
Like the Messi of rugby comparison came up quite a lot.
Yeah.
But he was kind of that.
I get
right?
it. I get it. The other name that I mentioned a minute ago then was Juan Martin Fernandez Lobbe.
Yes.
Again, when we first got into watching Argentina, he was kind of alongside Contepomi, the figurehead. He was, again, he captained them a lot. He's gone on to be a brilliant forwards coach with them as well. And was one of those players who never had a quiet game, who you'd always look at him and be like, he would stand up at key moments. Had a brilliant career with Toulon at club level as well.
Won repeated Champions Cups and was a critical player in one. I think he got man of the match, won the finals.
Yeah, phenomenal line out forward, phenomenal breakdown forward, and just a pest every time you played against him. And I find it really difficult to talk about Fernandez Lobbe because there was nothing he was bad at on a rugby pitch.
He was the perfect flanker.
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest flankers of all time. And I think he kind of gets left out a lot of those conversations. Because when you think about number 7s from that era, and obviously played 6 and 8 as well, and I think nowadays he probably would end up maybe as a 6. But he was in that era of McCaw, Pocock, Warburton, Brousseau.
Du Sautois.
Of players who had a very unique, very set style of play, who all came along at the same time and changed that position forever. And was still in that mould. And he wasn't that. He was the old style, which is all action, gets everyone on the pitch, occasionally wins the jackal, but does everything, right? And we've kind of swung back round that a little bit. You look at a lot of the world-class flankers now, right? And they are the likes of, Jack Morgan, Tom Curry, Josh van der Fleer, guys who fly in and clatter themselves and get about and do everything. I've just named all the Lions flankers, but
Ardi Savia, Rob Valentino, Peter Steph Dutoy.
Rather than pure jackal threats, right? Like you still have the Fraser McWrights and so on in the world, but I think Lobbe was kind of like the greatest example of what the 7 position was before his time. And so he kind of got left out of those conversations a little bit.
And also he was a really good 6 and 8 as well. He was brilliant.
A lot of his best rugby was at 8.
Yeah. And again, just as a leader, like there are very few people who've brought more to their country than he has for Argentina. I think we have to heavily consider him, but we'll put a pin in Lobbe.
Juan Manuel Leguizamon as well, I think. Similar era, similar player, also all action, more of that typical jackling threat, and often was the guy that forced him to move Lobbe to 8 or 6.
Yeah, adapted his game as well. His last couple of years of his career, when he moved to number 8, he was phenomenal. Like he was one of the best players on the planet for the last couple of years of his career, like his international career. He then played like MLR and Super Rugby America and stuff for ages, and Barbarians, odd caps. But when he was like in the Rugby Championship era, he was phenomenal. He had wasn't it one Rugby Championship where he scored in like almost every game?
I think he's one of 4 players to ever score against New Zealand, South Africa and Australia in the same year.
That's mad.
Yeah.
That's mad.
What a player. Nico Sanchez is another one. Yes. And Nico Sanchez deserves a mention.
He does.
The only player in the professional league to ever score 2 full houses.
Wow, that's a stat. Got one against the All Blacks, didn't he?
Got one against the All Blacks, where him and Pablo Matera on that day. And we're going to keep mentioning Pablo Matera in dispatches, but I think his story isn't written yet. I think it's too early to put him in.
Which is mad considering what he's achieved.
Oh yeah, and how long he's been around, right? He's been around since about
I just feel like he's got like another 40 years on his career. He's just that kind of player.
Yeah. So I think we're agreed that Pablo Matera may come into contention if we revisit this.
We'll do a re-rank in a few years, I reckon.
Yeah, but I think Matera isn't there yet.
Okay.
Nico Sanchez has retired, though.
Yeah.
And he retired by winning the Argentine League with the last kick of the game, which you couldn't sum his career up better than that, right?
Yeah.
He had previously won the championship when he was 18, when he scored the winning try with a few minutes to go. And in between those 2 dramatic late winners to win the local league, he did an awful lot for Argentina. The 3 World Cups I've been to, where I've had Argentine fans there, 3 men's World Cups that is, he was almost universally the most popular Argentine player.
Yeah.
He was someone that kids brought up. He was someone that kids brought up.
The cheer in the crowd.
The cheers every time he got the ball in all 3. Every time he came onto the pitch, and obviously was kind of used as an impact sub in the 2023 World Cup.
Scored the winning try in the quarter-final against Wales.
Intercept Sam Costello's pass. And remained relevant and found ways to keep his game going through all that period. An absolute legend and a critical man in that win over the All Blacks, the first one ever in 2020. Whereas him and Matera stood up and both had the game of their lives.
I can remember.
He did it off the back of his sister having passed away recently and did it for her, was in floods of tears afterwards. And just a truly inspirational and brilliant fly half. Sort of like the modern day Hugo Porta, right? In the way that he played the game in a very similar way and perhaps didn't have the heights that Porta reached, but where Hernandez was El Maggio and Contepomi was El Provocateur, you had instead, the other great 10 of the recent era being Sanchez.
El Statesman.
He was Hugo Porta, reinvented for the modern day. So I think he deserves a mention.
I just remember the first ever Argentine Rugby Championship game against South Africa. I remember they had Santi Fernandez and Felipe Contepomi were meant to be playing together as a combo with I think it was Gonzalo Tiesi playing outside him, and Contepomi pulled out the game beforehand, and in came Nicolas Sanchez, who went to the 2011 World Cup. But I can remember just thinking who's this kid? That's such a shame that he's had to pull out. And then seeing this young dude with the bright pink boots.
Always the pink boots. Always the pink boots.
And he was just incredible. And he was playing against Mornay Stain and just finessing him. And just the guy was incredible to watch. Sanchez, honestly, we have to put a pin in him. Beforehand, I was thinking of saying, well, we can't put him in as well as El Maggio and as well as Contepomi, but we do have to consider him because he's a legend. He's a proper legend.
Can I throw out a couple more names?
Hit me.
Gus Creevy?
Yeah. I have one of my things, my spaces, I have dedicated to, and I'm going to decide this after the conversation, Agustin Creevy
Yes.
/ Julian Montoya / Mario Ledesma.
Yeah.
3 legendary world-class hookers who've all come along in succession of each other.
Yes.
Argentina always have the second best hooker in the world and have done for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. They've always been in contention. Gus Creevy won the most caps of all of those and had the longest career.
Yeah.
Went from, 2006 was his first cap? 2005
Get
was
that
his first cap.
past tense out of your mouth there,
2005 to 2024, has only retired now in 2025.
He's got one more
because
year.
he promised his wife when he was 35 that he'd retire at 40. And he made this promise 5 years ago and was like, well, I guess I've got to retire now. And is having to keep it.
He's got one more year.
Yeah, I think he wants to play another year.
Yeah.
Came through as this pacey young offloading hooker, retired as this slow, boisterous but brilliant hooker. Had, obviously after a few years of, you can argue he was phoning it in for a little bit, but he then had this, he'd saved all his energy up for one brilliant game against the All Blacks. We scored a try, won a turnover, and we brought this up in the video at the time, but won a turnover on Wallace Atiti, whose dad was his opposite number on his debut. Oh no, second cap against Samoa.
First start,
against Samoa. So just could do everything. Brilliant player, universally beloved as well. Julian Montoya then in recent years there's a very strong argument he's the best hooker in the world. Obviously Dan Sheehan, Malcolm Marks, Bongi Mnambi, all there or thereabouts.
Yeah, Cody Taylor.
In terms of, what he can do as a pure hooker, whilst also having that jackal ability, having that carrying, and being so competitive, and his ability to shit talk in 16 different languages, which is a critical skill.
He's such a knobhead. I love him.
The fact that he can wind players up in English, in French, in Spanish, and in Afrikaans, really just tells you everything about the guy.
I've got a mate who's a die-hard Leicester Tigers fan, has been his whole life, and he says that he is the best front row forward that club's seen.
Yeah.
And that is crazy because they
that's the ABC club.
Yeah, what have they developed in their time but front row forwards world-class ones?
We may though discuss that in a few weeks' time with some special guests.
Indeed.
Whether anyone goes up on that. I wonder if anyone can work out who they might be.
No, no idea.
No one have any idea.
It's Craig Newby and Lewis Deacon.
Yeah, Lewis Deacon's got some hot takes on Graham
Even though
Roundtree,
he's a bit busy at the moment, Lewis Deacon is. But anyway.
Then Mario Ledesma.
Mario Ledesma, what a player. Again, kind of the archetype of a hooker.
Yeah.
When we, first started watching rugby, he was maybe the best hooker in the world. He was renowned as such. Brilliant at the line-out. Was known to be a really good scrummaging hooker. Kind of one of the scrummaging hookers, I think.
Nasty, nuggety, really scrummaged well, really got low and kind of drove into people. Almost was talked of as a third prop. Yeah, was a brilliant leader, captain Argentina, and then went on to coach them. Was head coach of the 2019 World Cup, carried on beyond that, and then was head coach in 2020 when they beat the All Blacks for the first time.
Yeah. That's a difficult one to pick. To separate those three is almost impossible, isn't it? Do we come back to that, or do you want to try and pick one out now?
I think they kind of all knock points off each other.
They do a bit, don't they?
I think Ledesma probably leads the charge for one being the first and two having the coaching credentials. But we'll see what Gus Pichot. I'm getting ahead of ourselves. What Gus Creevy goes on to do in his later career.
Okay. Should we come back to those three?
I have just mentioned someone.
Yeah.
And we should talk about Gus Pichot.
Let's talk about Gus Pichot. He's on my list, obviously, for a variety of reasons. Watching him back in the 2007 World Cup, which was the twilight of his career, he was already this glittering Argentine captain who's been and done it all right, and he was brilliant. He was a proper game-managing nine, kind of played a little bit ahead of his time, to be honest, with how good his variety of box kicking was not just thumping it long, but little chips over the top and so on. He had a brilliant pass on him and was pretty selfless in what he did as a scrum half.
Yeah.
That he was there to feed his nine, to feed his pack, and again just organising the people around him was brilliant. And you looked at Agustin Pichot and the way he played, and what control freak and what a complete knob he was on the pitch and how confrontational he was. And he's obviously going to retire and try and literally be in charge of rugby for the rest of his life. It's obvious.
And he'll give us a video game whilst wearing a suit with white trainers.
Yeah, he loves a suit and white trainers.
Which was his trademark. One of the
sunglasses,
greats. One of the true greats. Was a proper authority on the game. They kind of don't make scrum halves like him anymore.
Yeah.
Someone who's so in control of the game, so in control of the referee, so in control of his pack. You wouldn't, if you were a forward, right, and Gus Pichot was your nine, you were never lazy.
Yeah.
You were never allowed to be lazy. You had plenty of those, the likes of Mario Ledesma, often Ronnie Roncero, another player that's worth mention. A load of those players by the end of games, looked knackered, but Gus kept them moving. He kept them going. Patricio Albacete as well from that pack as well.
Oh, what a shout that is.
Brilliant player.
Yeah. Gus Pichot, okay, he's mostly in, but I think...
I was really torn between him and Hernandez, and in the end I went for like the Maggio factor.
Okay.
But I think I kind of regretted it, and I kind of do feel like it's maybe Pichot.
Let's throw a couple more names, and then we'll make a decision on that.
Yeah.
Why don't we?
Well, I've got pretty much all of my list has come up, apart from one of my four. Someone I would suggest would be in the final four.
Okay.
Marcelo Lofreda.
Ooh, I did not consider him.
So Marcelo Lofreda, for those unaware, those who may have forgotten, was a player in the 70s and 80s. Was the 12 alongside Hugo Porta. I remember seen as his foil, as kind of his guy. You know, he got Porta out of trouble a lot of times. If Porta ever tried something too risky or something wasn't on, he just gave it to Lofreda and he went like, yeah, fine, okay, I'll get you out of this. You know, it was kind of the foil there, was defensively excellent, was kind of considered one of the great 12s of the era.
Yeah.
13 as well a little bit. Was brilliant in their first ever win over Australia, where he was kind of the player of the match. And then the second win, he played, you know, alongside Hugo Porta, who was the player of the match. And those two kind of became like an iconic combo, the two of them. Do you know who scored their one try in that win over Australia, though?
Who?
Argentina's one try.
Who?
Christian Mendy, the father of Ignacio.
No way.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Who, if you go through the history of Argentine wingers, we haven't really brought any up, and I love, like, I've said this countless times, Argentine wingers are one of my favourite things in the world.
Yeah.
Too many of them have too short careers. Juan Imhoff, I think,
what a
stands
player.
out. I love Juan Imhoff.
Lucas Amorosino.
You mentioned Amorosino.
Santiago Cordero.
Yeah, Cordero, I really want to bring up, has just retired.
Yeah.
But then you go back like Gonzalo Camacho,
Yeah.
Horatio
Horatio
Aguja.
Aguja.
Like, there's so many, I'm sure, if you go further and further back as well.
Yeah.
Weirdly, most of them are Lanza twins of any of those, but hey. Joaquin Tukale.
Bautista Delgui.
Bautista Delgui.
Yeah.
Joaquin Tukale at fullback as well.
Outstanding.
Yeah, there's so many brilliant back three players for Argentina.
Mateo Carreras.
Yeah.
Man, yeah.
We could keep going forever. However,
Some more time, isn't
So, Lofreda, right? So, was...
you know what, I can't believe you talked this long about his playing career. I didn't realise just how much he was a player. Like,
so, as a player, was kind of, this kind of iconic combo with him and Porta.
Yeah.
He was the second Argentine player to ever win 50 caps after Porta. He then retired a few years after that and took up coaching. And from there, went on to rise through the ranks in Argentina and coached the national team. Took over in 2000 and saw their rise to what they are today. He was the coach in 2007 when they achieved their best ever World Cup result, achieved third place. They beat France. He led them to their first ever win over England at Twickenham. He led them to historic. It was a narrow loss against the Springboks, but like it was a game where they really stood up and kind of fought. Their draw with the Lions, like he laid the platform for everything that's come since. I think as a coach, he was the critical guy in changing mindset, right, and in being very smart. And obviously, he understood the game inside out, having played with Porter for so many years. The two of them really got it and got each other. But it gave him a kind of insight onto the game, and he saw the game as a whole picture. And often that Argentina team played quite a limited game, right? It was, some people said it was 10-man rugby, and yet whenever the other five got the ball, they were electric and brilliant, and that was kind of his style of play. 100%. He then went over to Leicester Tigers, where he did a great job, and coached them for a couple of years, and was, a very popular coach in that time. And one of the very rare Argentine coaches who's gone to somewhere other than other South American nations and been a success.
That is such a good shout.
Yeah.
And he is partially responsible for turning Argentina into a tier 1 team.
Yes.
And to getting them to the point where they are capable of being world beaters.
Yeah.
You mentioned who Contepomi's gone on to beat. Is that possible? You said the word foundations earlier.
Yeah.
Without those foundations that Lofreda put down in 2007,
and
you're right, there's such a butterfly effect to this.
Yeah. He was coached from 2000. It was a long-term project building up to that World Cup in 2007.
Yeah. I hadn't considered Lofreda one bit there. His name hadn't crossed my mind. And you have just built an almost bulletproof case for him. So, okay, last couple of names. You mentioned Albacete a minute ago.
Yeah.
I just want to say him as a shout out because proper set piece lock, had a phenomenal career. Loved watching the guy play. Brilliant career with Claremont as well. Rodrigo Roncero, I think, deserves more than just a shout, to be honest, because was the cornerstone of that pack for best part of a decade or more, you know, was really highly thought of by opposition props throughout the world. That, you know, like Adam Jones and the likes of him have like gone on and said like Ron Serra was one of the hardest props to scrummage against. That a lot of people said that about him, and so I think he really deserves a strong mention here. But I think we have got enough names there to try and pick.
Ignacio Corletto,
what a player!
He's not going. He's not going.
Probably
in there,
didn't have the
but
longevity as some of these players. But thinking
what a
about
player.
Argentine back three players and their contribution to society, he's right up there.
Okay. So Porter is in.
Porter is
the safest bet.
Yeah.
Contepomi is in.
His
coaching career, I think, takes him over the edge.
Yes.
He's in.
Yeah.
Right? I think Loffreda has to be in.
I think he's got 1 foot in there.
I think in terms of, if we're looking at contribution to the Argentine national team, I think as a player, he probably doesn't make it in, but he's worth an honourable mention shout.
7 years as a coach, man. That's pretty extreme.
His coaching career puts him very close on its own. Like, his coaching career...
Go on then, we'll take Loffreda.
You put the two together and you're like, okay, I think he goes in.
Yeah, let's take Loffreda. That last spot is wide open.
Yeah.
Wide open. So we've got Lobbe, we've got Hernandez, and we've got 3 hookers to compete with. Anybody else you want to go into that ring? Pichot. Oh my good God. Okay. I forgot Pichot wasn't a guarantee. Okay.
I think it's probably Pichot.
You think it's probably Pichot?
I think it's between Pichot and El Maggio.
I think it's between Pichot and Creevy. Ooh. Creevy has contributed a lot.
He has.
Even though he's phoned it in for a couple of years. But just like, he'll just whack his boots on and play for the boys. He'll fill up the water bottles. He'll do everything. Like, he's that lad, but he's at international level. Like, I love him to bits.
But we've also got El Maggio.
We've also got El Maggio, who, like, may have done less lacing up of his boots, but dropping a ball onto it.
Still played for a long time. Like, had that period he converted into centres.
He was good in the
very well
centres
there.
in 15.
Yeah.
I think... Look, my heart is saying Creevy, but my head is saying Pichot.
I think it's Pichot.
I think it's Pichot. Okay, we'll lock in Pichot.
Okay, we've got 4. That was...
harder than I thought.
Yeah. But I was about to say reasonably painless.
Yeah. I'm very surprised you didn't go for any of those hookers as one of your main 4.
I think they all knock points off each other.
Yeah, I get it.
Ledesma would be close. I think Creevy would be
close. But look at Creevy. Look at that broken nose. Are you going to say no to that broken nose?
Montoya could get there by the end of his career.
Yeah.
Same with Pablo Matera, who, again, we haven't really talked about.
The fact that we've not put Montoya on this has added an extra 4 years to his career. He's going to go out and prove us wrong in 1 game.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear him on the ref mic saying, those guys say I am not the best 4 rugby players in Argentina, hey? You still think that? In the way that he does.
Yeah.
Very, very petty man, and I love him to bits.
Okay.
Right. Well, Aguado... the question is he satisfied with our 4 members that we've put in there?
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think he's happy to not be in there himself. I think he's happy to make up space for some of his friends who he's welcomed onto the pitch and past. And the thing is, once again, we were saying about Montoya being petty, but let's be honest, if we left Gus Pichot out there, he'd have just walked in and stood and like booked out, like bought land on Mount Rushmore to live up there himself.
Well, do you know who the pettiest rugby player of all in Argentina is?
Who?
Guido.
Petty. Oh, God. Anyway, in the...
I couldn't not say it.
In the gift shop, we are selling yellow cards as a tribute to Thomas Lavanini.
Yeah. I did think about mentioning when you mentioned Locks from Claremont. I was like, are we bringing him up?
Not in that context.
One of the great scrummaging locks of all time.
One of the great Simbin locks. Simbin Route Mushmore. We are going to do that.
We have to do that.
I just called it Route Mushmore. That's what it's called now. Simbin Route Mushmore coming to you in the next couple of years.
If it's who gets on the score sheet most often, Lavanini has to be on there.
Yeah, that's true.
He's the most carded player of all time.
It's very true. It's very true.